I listened to the chairman. He was, gave a target 20 billion, let's achieve it. Richard, I'm going to be quite brutal here, okay? If you want to achieve that, you might as well pack your bags and just forget about it. It's nothing. It's nothing. We lost our focus along the way. I used to ask the former president in consultative committee, sir, our exports to GDP share is falling. Then he would ask his officials and they would say, but honorable member, exports are not the only thing. There are other things that we have to do. I tried to convince the former government for 5 years, being an opposition MP, that we were losing our way. 20 billion, where did it come from? I'm not trying to criticize anyone, because as the policy, our policy is going to be different. This is the first time I'm speaking to the exporters as the chap in charge of the policy shop. The Prime Minister has taken the ministry. He's got a whole lot of things to do. He's told me and a few others, I said, get down to this, talk to people, figure out where this country needs to go. And in trying to do that, I bring now to the table what I've been talking about for the last 5 years. I always used to tell Richard, I see you working hard. I don't know whether you're working hard, but his photographs are in the newspapers always. It looks as if he was working hard. And he's very proud to say the export numbers have increased. I used to congratulate him as an opposition MP. I used to always congratulate him on the numbers, and he knows that. And probably that's why he asked me to come here. That I will support him. I will support you to come up with a policy for exports. Remember, our government's program is going to be plugging Sri Lanka to the world. It is not about unplugging Sri Lanka from the world, as somebody once said. I want you to calculate, Mr. Chairman, like now if you can, what 20 billion means, you said by 2020, as a percentage of GDP. 20 billion means nothing if it is a percentage of 2,000 million. What does it mean? What does 2 mean? What does 20 mean? What does 200 mean? What does 2,000 mean? It means nothing if it is not relative to something else. So, Mr. Chairman, can you work that number and give me? Because 10 years ago, we exported 34% of our GDP. Okay? Yes, we did. Today we export 15% of our GDP. We should not be happy, we should be sad. We should be sad because our strategies have, in fact, disincentivized ladies and gentlemen like you who work hard, create jobs, take this country forward. The policy hasn't been conducive enough for you to put more money into exports. Who wants to hazard a guess, unless I've told it myself in some previous occasion, what is the exports to GDP of Hong Kong? What is the GDP, or rather exports to GDP ratio of Singapore? Who wants to hazard a guess? I'm going to put my good friend from grade 1 in trouble because he won't take me, he takes the bad, wrong way. Ashan, what do you think? Ashan says 50%. 300%. 300% is the exports in that region. And it grew from 15 to 20 to 25 to 30 to 50 to 100 to 200 to 250 together. We, on the other hand, has come down from 34 to 15. Loud applause. not for us, for Hong Kong. So get me right when I say we have to completely revamp this system. Either you export or you forget about it. What are we going to do with the $67 billion economy? What are we going to do? Clothing our people, feeding our people, entertaining our people. You have to clothe the people outside. You have to feed the people outside. You have to entertain the people outside of this little island. If you want to create a logistics hub, let's go ahead and create the damn thing. Not keep it in the book. The 5-hub strategy of the former government is a good one. Not all 5. But if you want to create a maritime hub, I don't see anything wrong with it. I see it as something right, where we need to go. But you have to, economics and the markets always work on incentives. You put money where you can make more money. Is that right or is that wrong? You are successful business people. You know where to invest. So if you invest in exports, that means at least it's on the margin you're making something. But if you don't invest in exports and invest in construction, you make more. Am I wrong? I'm not wrong, I'm right. You make more in construction and you make it easier in construction than you do in exports. I'm not going to go through these slides, but I just have it for the sake of having it. But what you see is we are a construction-led. And mining and construction, I'll come to that because you mine sand to construct. Domestic transport, wholesale and all that. So in economics there are things called tradables and non-tradables. Right? Tradable goods are the ones that you can trade. You can't trade a haircut unless you bring the Indians here and they cut the hair and go back. You can't trade cataract operation. You can if they come here or if we go there and we do that trade. Right? I don't want to get into that. But I'm talking about manufactured goods and services that are tradable as opposed to those that are not tradable. So if you look at where Sri Lanka's growth has come from, construction, wholesale and retail trade, finance, domestic transport and mining. None of those are tradable. Right? These are local, essentially businesses and construction particularly. Right? And in construction, I've seen numbers today. I was at a press conference, and most of you already know about the 500,000 rupee, what do you call that? Nanalinde Pratisanskarane. If you charge 500,000 bucks to repair a bathing well, you can make a lot of money. You don't make that kind of money in a business. So while you see the GDP moving like the meter at the petrol pump, speeding up, you don't see the benefits of that growth flowing to the people of this country. Where are the jobs? We don't want to create an economy that does not create jobs. People come to your office, Richard knows this, as a politician, people come to Richard's office, and I'm sure that they say, Amatuma Rasa, I think Rasa Amada, Andu Rasa Amada. So it's kind of jobless growth. The jobs get created in the government sector. 10,000, 20,000 at a time. By circular almost. And now as of this evening, 30,450 rupees becomes the minimum salary of a public servant. And you get a pension also after that. The reasons behind that salary increase, we will not get into right now. But what I'm trying to tell you is the kinds of jobs that are being created and the kind of industries that are growing are not the ones we really want to grow. And don't give excuses about, everybody is seeing low growth. That is not the case. Many countries have seen much faster growth than Sri Lanka. Then there's this thing about protectionism. Deshiya. To me, Deshiya means improving the local economy. To improve the local economy, you've got to create jobs. To create jobs, you have to export because we're a small country. So, if you create jobs, if you export, and if our currency remains strong, then you're building the Deshiya economy. I don't subscribe to the view that creating a Deshiya economy is, growing your own tomatoes and whatever else that those seeds are supposed to turn into, if they actually, root themselves and perform. The protectionism in this country has increased, Honorable Minister, from 13.5% when the last Ranil Wickremesinghe government left office to now, from 13.5% to 24%. So protectionism has increased. I am not always saying that we shouldn't do anything to ensure our good friend Mr. Nimala Siri, who is complaining about his leather products. But trading must take place. You import to export. If you look at Hong Kong's imports to GDP, what do you think it is? 200 or some percent. So Hong Kong increases, imports a lot of things, but it adds value and exports more. So when you increase protectionism, that also negatively impacts if you are trying to create value in the import and value export business. And if you are particularly trying to plug yourself into a value chain, supply chain, that is not going to be that easy, isn't it? Do you agree with me or not? Do you agree with me or not? Yeah. Sorry. Noel says we do, sir. So we have to look at, there's a super study, I don't know if you've seen it, Honorable Minister. I don't know if the EDB chairman and other officials have seen it. It's a paper published by two of Sri Lanka's most eminent economists, Premachandra Atukorala and it's not Sarat Radhapatra, someone will come to me. But it's published, was published by I think MIT Press last year on a study about what has happened to Sri Lanka's trade. A real hard-hitting, non-political, professional piece of research. I don't know if anyone has seen it. If not, I will send it to you, sir, and then you can put it on your website and people can understand as to what has been going on in terms of the policies of the last 10 years that in fact discouraged external trade. So therefore, the perennial question that I was even discussing just now before we came here they were quite surprised. The governor of the central bank and myself walked into Pagoda and had a bakari. And there are also the balance between revenue and trade openness. Right? So where is the revenue coming from? Duties. Right? Government needs duties to pay salaries, pay interest. So there's a balance. How much you open up. But that is the question that needs to be solved. And also, we haven't diversified enough. I'm not going to bore you with this stuff because you already know. You have probably been told this multiple times. I saw a recent report by the World Bank comparing Sri Lanka and Malaysia 10 years ago versus now. The diversification of Malaysia, how much they have diversified as opposed to Sri Lanka, we pretty much stay the same level of diversification. And also value-added component in our exports. Yeah, sure, some of the apparel people have done extremely well. You know, they sell very expensive apparels wherever, top quality around the world. But, and there are some others who have done so. But by and large, we haven't tapped the potential of added value in our exports. I'll give you an example, for instance, ilmenite. Right? We export ilmenite in its raw form. The moment you turn it into titanium dioxide, you get a much higher value. So why is it that we continue to export raw ilmenite when at places like Slintech, the nanotech agency, etc., we got some of the most brilliant minds working on conversion of these things. It hasn't happened. So it is a matter either of people not wanting to do it because the transactions cost of doing it is high, or else it is because there is no business case. Right? I don't think it is the latter, because there has to be a business case. If the incentive structures are right, Honorable Minister, if we can do public-private partnerships, why can't we turn ilmenite into titanium dioxide and sell to paid companies? Why are you not doing that? Why is it that nobody, I'm not saying nobody doing it, perhaps you tried and failed. But that's just an example as to how we need to restructure the incentive structure in this country so that value-added exports can actually take place. Diversification of exports. Now this is an important one because people are saying diversify, diversify, diversify. Right? It is not that needs to diversify also. You have traditional business links. You know, I had this experience that I once had with the gentleman who was initially responsible for even Brandix and MAS, Martin Trust, had the opportunity to have lunch with him once in New Hampshire, a small place. He told me that he'll take me to lunch, and his favorite meat was five types of mushrooms. So you asked me to eat 5 types of mushrooms. Okay. I had the 5 types of mushrooms, and I said, what is the secret to the success? You have done well, your partners have done well, they're global players. There is really not the price, Harsha, it's the relationships that we have built. Right? And these relationships are very strong, and we rely on those agreements, the relationships that we have. So if you can strengthen on those relationships, and if you can even diversify within some of those nations that you're already in, for instance, that is also a way of looking at adding value and diversifying into that country. For instance, foreign policy and trade policy can't be in two separate silos. We cannot say the Europeans and the Americans are conspiring to throw the government over, when at the same time our exports are going to Europe and the United States. So you have to overlay trade policy and economic policy on your broader foreign policy. Right? And that is why I want to come to what the EDB and you can do also in embassies, etc. If you look at the embassy staff here, they employ local people and they are always trying to sell something and bring some investment. Isn't that the case? And they understand the local dynamics. They'll engage with the top business people. They'll engage with political leaders. And they always try to promote the trade and investment angles. And sometimes trade becomes the most important component in that embassy. Isn't that the case? It's all about trade. Australians want to sell things to us. Australians want to bring investments here. The Japanese want to do that. The Chinese, that's the only thing they do. The Britishers, everyone. Right? So you have to build relationships in these countries through the diplomatic and embassies, understand the dynamics and move our trade agenda through those outlets. And I think you can play a role in ensuring that the right type of people are employed in those embassies, that people who are employed in embassies to promote trade know how to spell the word trade. I think you need to employ local staff to be able to lobby. That I think is something that you can do. And don't forget that our competitors are moving very fast. I was having a discussion with one of Sri Lanka's largest exporters a little while ago. Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP agreements. He said they came from Vietnam 2 days ago and they were very scared about what could be the turnout or what might happen if Vietnam signs the TPP and what that would spell to Sri Lanka's trade with the US. A person who was with him at this meeting, there's a few of us, he said, Macha, it is like if you remove the plug in the sink. Everything will go. I don't know whether I want to dramatize it that much, but the sentiment was expressed by one of this country's largest exporters. So instead, I'm not trying to scare you people or the DOC, but it is imperative that we start working on bilateral and regional trade agreements. And I know the Honorable Minister has been very keen in trying to establish those links. The policies must be formulated in such a way by the policy shop of the new government that encourages such bilateral and regional trading agreements. FTAs, he mentioned the FTA with China. I heard, not that I heard, I know that it doesn't always look very, it's not black and white. There are lots of reading between the lines in trade agreements, and we've experienced that with the FTA, with India. and the reasons for not going for SEPA are not that clear. The logic I don't necessarily understand. But I think if we lay down the rules of the game, it actually might be better rather than in the current status where it is chaotic, no one knows what is happening, and they can just play whichever rules that they want to adhere by, right? So if we have a set of rules, then at least there is a framework that both India and Sri Lanka can play in the identified markets. So the point I want to make is that we must aggressively try to move towards trade agreements that benefit us. If it doesn't benefit us, of course, there is no point. But the whole point in the benefiting us type of trade agreements is that if we can have, time is up. Is that if we get into asymmetric trade agreements, if the trade agreements are symmetric, we lose out. We have to have the agreements asymmetric so that those agreements are in our favor. You know, particularly when you change a regime or you win a war or, some significant event happens or you have a tsunami or something like that, positive or negative, something happens to a country, the rest of the world sometimes wants to give you what's called a window of opportunity. Right? We get a window of opportunity. Right? So you got to move fast and strike it while it's hot. So he's right, the EU talks are happening. The US FTA is something we need to aggressively push. We've already started chatting with some people on it. The TIFA talks needs to continue, Mr. Minister, and we will support you in every way possible. So both these opportunities must be leveraged. And even the China FTA, it is about linking that, using that FTA to expand to other countries. And if that is possible, then there is scope. Finally, the investments have been not the kind that we would like to have. Because, he says why? Because most of it have been for apartments and hotels. We would have liked to see investments in exports. We would have liked to see people bringing money and saying, look, let us put a plant to convert ilmenite into titanium dioxide. That kind of investment hasn't happened. In fact, we were in a fairly high-powered meeting yesterday chaired by the Prime Minister. He said we should have shut down the VFO. Is that the kind of investments that we have been promoting and getting are not necessarily the ones that we would have, that we like very much. The job potential itself is very limited. Casinos were a type of investment and they would have created a particular type of job. But that's not the kind of job that we want to create, because this is not the time to spell out a larger policy objective. But in 5 words, what our government wants to do is to create a highly competitive social market economy. That is my job in trying to get people together in this policy shop to come up with the policies so that we can move this country towards that goal, a highly competitive social market economy. You understand, highly competitive. Social market, you may not understand, or you may pretend not to. It is nothing to do with moving away from the capitalist model we have. It is nothing to do with doing away with the market mechanism, which is the most efficient way of allocating resources. But we must have social, political and economic justice for the people of this country. As a politician, I can't ignore that side of the equation, right? And so when you say highly competitive, that is the kind of investment we are looking for in Sri Lanka. I will skip this. Exports of services. There are some positive stories, but we can leverage this a lot more. Tourism, I know, has grown rapidly, but it is too small to be captured in any significant way in the GDP growth story. So challenges for EDB, I think working more aggressively on opening up new markets to Sri Lankan exporters. It is as much as the job of the exporter to try and get new markets, it is the job of the government to help them to get to new markets. If the government is fighting with a country that they want to expand into, then it will be difficult for them to get into that market. But on the other hand, if the government is negotiating, having friendly relations with that country, it becomes easier for the exporters to go into that country. Right? I mean, a European Union GSP Plus is a classic example. And I'm happy to note that we've pretty much cracked the fishing export issue, and we've come into an agreement to install the vessel monitoring system in these people who are working on it are here, that by, I guess, November or something like that, June, July, might be earlier than that. So hopefully, once that fishing export ban is removed, we can then start racing ahead on the GSP Plus issue. So to open those markets, there's nothing the private sector can do. There's nothing you can do, exporter can do in getting the vessel monitoring system in place. What can you do to help that? Right? It is the job of the state, it is the job of the government to ensure that those things are done. And this trade desk in foreign missions must do better, which I already explained, and closer consultation with the private sector to understand their needs. So, exports must be the center, the core of our development plan. It has to be. And it has to be not low quality exports, it has to be high quality exports. So if we can all converge on that fact that we are all working towards creating a highly competitive economy, which necessarily means in the global context a country that is able to compete with anybody. The time, the era that we compared ourselves with Bangladesh and Nepal is behind us. We're far better than that now. Even Vietnam, right? So we have to get there. And as in the state, the Sinmadure is the Paris is the top line. Sinmadure is who? Sinmadure. As the Sinmadure of the policy planning and economic affairs ministry, I give you my word that we will do everything possible to change course, and I don't know whether he got the number. Same won't do. So the chairman says 20 billion is the same. Is 15%. That's not good enough. Certainly not good enough. We have to make it, we have to have targets that are beyond 100%. We have to have targets that are beyond 100% of GDP. So, that is the way we think. That is the way we think. you very much.